Hello, I want to talk a little bit about how to write an excellent argumentative essay. An excellent argumentative essay. And we're going to do this in just about 3 minutes. We'll keep it brief. It's not complicated. Writing an excellent argumentative essay, if you keep it simple, you'll get the job done. If you complicate it, it'll probably be a mess. In many cases, it is. Keep it super simple. That's the old KISS formula. So it begins obviously with a hook. We want to hook the reader. There's different ways we can do that with a really catchy quote. We can do it with an intriguing question that the reader has to know the answer to. Maybe maybe a brief, like super brief mini story that captures the reader's attention. Something to hook our attention. And as soon as we hook the attention, quickly. Don't say another word. Just list your thesis. Maybe a transition phrase. That's it. So we're talking the whole intro is maybe four or five sentences. Brief. I mean, like a quarter of a page at the most, really. We want to keep the intros brief because the idea is to get the reader's attention, not wear them out and lose their attention, right? All right. So we'll keep this intro brief and move on. So we want to hook their attention, and then we get to the thesis. The thesis is the next essential point. You got to have a clear thesis at the end of your introduction. Okay, that's the last sentence, and nothing should come after that last sentence. Now, of course, not everybody follows that, and that's why there's so much confusion, and why readers have to read. They don't know what the thesis is. They have to go back and reread the intro. Sometimes, evaluate every sentence to figure out which one's the thesis. And generally, few readers outside of, say, a reading group are going to have that kind of patience. They're just going to, unless they're really determined to read that essay, they're done. They'll move on. So we wanted to keep it simple for the reader. And here's what you need for a fresh thesis: a bold, outrageous statement about the topic, something surprising, fresh, distinct, unexpected, something debatable. Okay. For example, take the subject of the death penalty. If my thesis is the death penalty is wrong, well, that's not any of those things. It's not. Well, you could say it's bold, but it's certainly not surprising. It's virtually what half of all essays on the topic have used that exact same thesis. So there's nothing surprising there. Now, what if we said if we said the death penalty is good for prison economics? Well, that's something that nobody's ever written before. I just came up with it off the top of my head. But something unexpected so we don't want to write the same thesis that literally 3 millions of people have written. We want something surprising and fresh, something clear, strong, debatable, distinct. Debatable means people will disagree with it. It's not PC. It's not something that's going to offend nobody. At least the majority of people are not going to agree with you, or your thesis is no good. You want something that there will be plenty of disagreement with, but it's not totally unreasonable either. You have to be able to make the argument. So there's your thesis. And then basically we need reasons. That's your paragraphs. Reason 1 is paragraph. Reason 2, reason 3, those are your paragraphs. 1 reason per paragraph. Keep it simple. There's no summary of what the death penalty is. We don't need 2 to 3 paragraphs explaining that somebody dies. We're not trying to fill up space here and embarrass our readers. What we want to do is just stick to the topic and don't say obvious things. Okay, don't give us the definition of death or anything like that. Just reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. All right, so that's your body of your paragraph, and then a conclusion, basically 1 or 2 sentences. Just wrap it up. Something memorable, like a powerful image, a prediction, whatever you think. There's different strategies you can use. Now, for one more point though about the body paragraphs is what I call the ICE formula. And the ICE formula is, we're going to use sources, right? Let's assume we're doing a research paper here. We're going to bring in some sources. Maybe we bring in 10 or 12 sources for this essay. So the standard approach of many writers is to just slavishly agree with anything any published writer says. Oh, I agree. I totally agree. They like to use words like, oh, I totally agree with that. and I agree with this, and I agree with that. They agree with the experts, and they heap praise on these these other published authors because they're good writers and they wrote something good, something persuasive. However, that's good for them, but it's not good for you because essentially, like the whole point here is you wrote an essay with your own argument, a strong thesis that's fresh. Remember, I used a fresh thesis. That means you have your own argument different from the others. So if you're arguing the same thing as all your sources are arguing, then that's just like an echo chamber. So we don't want to do that. You should have your own thesis. So when I quote other sources, I'm not looking for people to agree with. I'm looking for people to disagree with. I want to point out why I disagree with this author and this author and this author. So here's what we want to do with sources. We want to, in fact, if I totally agree with this other author, a professor might be looking, well, did this person also plagiarize? Are they following the same argument as this person that they're praising? And a lot of times they are, and plagiarism is an issue because they didn't come up with their own fresh thesis and argument. Otherwise, they'd be disagreeable. So in many cases, we will disagree. Now, the ICE formula is basically introduce, cite, explain. So when I bring in a source, I'll use very simple. The introduce is like according to Professor Smith of University of San Diego. That's my introduction, and then I'll give a quote. And then I can use different wording. One expert said, and then I'll have the citation in quotes. Unless it's a paraphrase, then I'll just have it there, and it is like one sentence. Keep these to one sentence as a rule of thumb. Brief, one sentence. This is about your voice, not we don't want long quotes. Your whole essay is going to be 90%, your 85, 90% your voice, your ideas. So we'll bring in these quotes, but really only to disagree with them and not humiliate them. We want to be respectful, but just point out why our theory is better. So, and that's what we do in the ICE is explain. The E is explain. We explain why we disagree with them, why our thesis is better than theirs. Not to be petty, but let's face it, we're making an argument here, and so that's what we have to do. And what it does is it also sets you apart as an expert because you've done the research. You've read a dozen articles, maybe 24, maybe 100. In any case, you have an opinion on this subject, and you have good reasons for your argument, and you're going to be explaining why you take a different approach than these other authors who comment on the topic. So that's the ICE formula, and if we bring up any other topics, remember, we're going to bring up like one sentence. And if we're going to summarize a source, we keep it very brief, like one sentence summary. Summarize a whole book, you can do that in one sentence. Because again, we don't want to waste our readers' time reading. They aren't reading it to find out what some other author has to say. They want to know what you have to say about this topic. So keep it focused on your own argument. So that's it. That's the keys to an excellent argumentative essay. Of course, follow the citations and formatting according to, if you're using APA or MLA, just follow that. It takes an extra 5 minutes. And the difference is you make a good impression right off the bat with your professor. So, all right, there you go. Have a great time and write with passion.